going and standing in front of a mirror and talking to the mirror about those ideas. On this side of the mirror, it was me, this 10-year-old boy. On the other side, there were 100,000 people listening to me. They were really getting excited with every word that I was saying. They really loved me. I was getting lots of attention. I really liked that whole energy in that room. I must say, I really loved it. I was big, I was awesome in their eyes. I was very famous, and it felt so good. I really loved it. And then I thought to myself, yes, what this app is talking about, saying, I take this 10-year-old boy, I bring him up, I energize him, I'll help him grow and illuminate, elevate, and shine. Well, that was why, right away, still in my bed, that's what really happened to me. Just jumped out of bed, sat in front of my laptop, my everyday posture in work, and I started sending an email to Leon. I wanna, sign up my name for the Toastmasters. And that was why I really joined this club. I trusted it because I saw there was something inside me connecting to this club. And I want everybody as well to think about this when you passively sometimes go on your phone and look at the content that's there. I think it's really the time just to become more friends with those monstrous androids inside our very smart phones. And just to do that, I think sometimes you have to kill the monsters inside me. Thank you very much.
It's quite interesting how he ties about trust and our clubs and all the big companies that control our internet. So he's right. I think Google or Facebook, they pretty much check everything we have. So maybe a Monday night to have real human connection might be the way going forward, so you can just leave your phones for at least one night and they can chat you. Or at least they'll show you about public speaking. That's great. Our next speaker is also giving his first Toastmasters icebreaker speech, and his topic is about Santa's workshop. He's going to do the pathway about innovative plannings. So I wonder what's he going to name between innovative planning with his Santa's workshop. What can we learn from him? Please help me welcome Hans.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and esteemed guests. I'm here this evening very excited to share my Santa's Workshop icebreaker speech with you all. One thing about me, I love to build. I live to build. And one of my favorite things to build with is used building supplies. So I would fill my shop with all kinds of different materials that were once purposed for something else. I have a wide range of different talents because of some of the shops I've worked in. I worked in some high-end woodworking shops using a lot of very exotic hardwoods, and then I've also worked in machine shops, welding, machining, you name it, to aluminum and steel. And this made me open my mind to possibilities within all the material that would be given to me by my friends and family. And they would bring all kinds of crazy stuff to me sometimes. And of course, because I hate throwing anything away, I would keep it. I had a shop in my house that it was a really good size, so I put all the material in the shop, and I made all kinds of crazy stuff out of it all. And it was so exciting to see the possibilities that I could get from these materials. And when December would come around, I would get my elf hat on, and I would turn my shop into Santa's workshop. And I would try to figure out different projects to build for all my friends and family. And one of the projects that I started with was oil diffusers made out of aluminum, made out of scrap metal, of course. And then another year I did eating trays. And it was so cool to give those to all my friends, and they love to receive a handmade gift. And it was just really, really powerful seeing the fact that I made something out of nothing, essentially. So the next year, I was looking at what I should make, and that year a bunch of my friends gave me very similar materials. So I would look at these pile of materials and think, it's like I was a hoarder. But I would keep on saying to myself, I'm only a hoarder if I don't rotate this material through my shop, right? So I would force myself to get it moving. And this year, because I had a very similar amount of material, I would get a chair, and I would sit and I would stare at the pile of material, look at the chaos within that pile of material, trying to find some inspiration, some kind of purpose, some meaning that I could bring out of it. So sometimes I would sit there with 2 fingers of single malt. Other times I would just get motivated because inspiration I would see it in the potential of the material. Well, this year, as I stared at it, an idea came up. Toy boxes. I would usually try to build something that I could make multiples of, like a really straightforward project that wasn't too complicated, and something that everybody would be able to use day to day. So yeah, the toy boxes were perfect. But 5 of my friends gave me material that year. So I really wanted to give them back the material that they had given to me, which they did not know what to do with it. So I thought it would be meaningful to give them that material back. So I separated all the material out, used a lot of innovative planning during the process, and one of my friends, he collected records, so I made his box perfect for him. Another friend was just having a baby, so I made their toy box as big as I possibly could, for obvious reasons. I think they were the only ones that actually used it as a toy box. So I would much rather spend time in my shop rather than a shopping mall at Christmas time, of course. I ended up spending about 35 hours creating 14 toy boxes. And of course, I had to go and deliver them on toy boxing day. And you'd think that I would get my satisfaction and my gift from seeing all the faces of my friends receiving the toy box and just seeing the meaning and purpose, getting the material back that they had given me months before. But really, it was getting all that material out of my shop, which definitely cleared room for the next project. Now, you'd think that I would have a lot more enjoyment getting that out of my shop, but once those were given to the owners, I I just found a lot of meaning looking at the pile of chaos. So I invite you all, the next time you're looking at something chaotic, something that you think doesn't have potential, I invite you to look deep within it and find some kind of thread that you can nurture, that you can bring out, and maybe, just maybe, you can make a toy box out of it. Thank you.
By the way, I would like to invite Hans to utilize our Facebook that no one else uses except me, to post his toy box. So next Christmas, maybe we can also order something from him. Our next speaker is Mark Zuckerbuehler. This will be his very advanced speech. He's working on his ACG, which is Advanced Communicator Goal. And this speech is about speaking of the craft. So please help me welcome Mark, and then I'll give him the topic of the speech. So if you notice, the theme of tonight is about your perfect Christmas gifts. When Marina and I talk about the theme, I told her, I said, I don't care about political correctness. And then she's like, high five, and she told me, by the way, I'm Jewish. So thank you, it's a great way to know, and a person, Marina, that's so open. Your topic then is political correctness. It's a tough one, but let me give a bit of maybe context. As at micro level, at maybe perhaps this meeting, or even as a club, and then stretch it to our society, stretch to the whole Canada as a nation, and our government. Have we taken the political correctness too far or not far enough?
Thank you, Mina. Fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. Very interesting topic, political correctness. Have we taken it too far or not far enough? I grew up in Edmonton, like Doug, actually not very far from Doug, on the other side of the ravine. We talked about that a little bit earlier. And when I grew up in my neighborhood, it was quite a diverse neighborhood. Myself, I grew up in a very liberal-minded family. As a matter of fact, my parents were probably one of 5 liberal, federal liberal voters in Alberta at that time. And it was different. And growing up in this liberal-minded family, the one thing that my parents really instilled in me and my brothers and sisters was this idea that we are all equal. That doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what you do, we're all the same. If you cut yourself and blood comes out, blood is the red is the color of blood, we're all the same. It doesn't really matter. And growing up in this neighborhood in Edmonton, where there were a lot of people from different cultures, and as a family ourselves, we did an awful lot of traveling. My parents, when they were first married, they traveled the world through the job. My father was an engineer and working for a consulting company, and they traveled the world. And somehow they ended up in Edmonton just by chance. And at that time, they had 3 children, and I was the last one to come. And I came in Edmonton, and they realized, okay, we need to buy a house and settle down, and that's how I ended up growing up in Edmonton. So why am I bringing this up? Because part of it relates to political correctness and this whole idea of who's right, who's wrong, what are we doing, And it goes back to the values that were instilled in me when I was growing up, that because of this openness that my parents really shared with us, and they showed us the world, and they gave us this idea that it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, you just need to be who you are, live your life the way you are. And when it comes to political correctness and how that relates, I think sometimes as society we almost get a little bit too caught up in it now. And I understand why people have come up with this idea of political correctness, that you have to say the right thing, you have to do the right thing, and if you do this, you're wrong, wrong, wrong. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think the approach that we need to take as a society, as a culture, that we are part of this vast world. There are people from all over the world that have different ideas from us, and it doesn't matter what I think. What really matters is what you think, because I may be in complete disagreement with you, and what I may think is totally fine, you may be offended by it. How can we ever come to an agreement on that? There is no sort of common ground between that. So as a nation, and I think Canada is a very good example of that, that we're of a nation of people from around the world where we allow a lot of different cultures to grow and be themselves, and people to be themselves. So we've been talking about Christmas, and some people here don't even celebrate Christmas. Christmas has been a part of my life. It hasn't had a religious connotation to me, but I have celebrated it my entire life. And I actually enjoy Christmas, and I enjoy the whole essence of Christmas, this idea of meeting with people that you generally don't see during the year. You make these connections, you spend time with your family. These are constants that happen every year at Christmas time. And I enjoy that. But I don't really connect to the religious aspect of it. However, on Christmas Eve, if I am in front of a television, I will turn on one of those concerts that's coming from some cathedral somewhere in the world. And it's beautiful music. It really is beautiful music. And it may be religious music, but I still think it's beautiful music. And that's a special night, and that's something that I will do that's special. Or I'll actually go to the church on Christmas Eve for a service, even though I'm only going there to enjoy the music. So coming back to political correctness, I don't think the question is that have we gone too far or not far enough. I don't think political correctness is what we should be doing as a society. We should be living our lives who we are and respecting other people and respecting what they feel is important, what they think is right. And we, at the same, do that for ourselves. And do not judge people. Do not think that they're doing something wrong because they're doing something different. Growing up in Edmonton, which was, people think Alberta's a very narrow-minded province, but it's actually a very diverse province. And when I was growing up, we had people from everywhere. And that's been a part of my life, my whole life. And growing up with these liberal-minded parents who really instilled this, see the world, experience the world, embrace it, and feel what people have to offer. That is what I want to spend my life doing, and that's what I think we as a culture should be doing. So forget about political correctness. Just be honorable to people, treat people with dignity, treat people with respect, and you don't need to worry about political correctness. Thank you very much.
Great speech. Thank you, Mark. To catch up the time, I will have to bring up our next evaluators quickly. That will be Colin Williams. He'll be evaluating Doug. For some reasons, Colin always has a way to deliver his evaluation with a dose of humor. Please help me welcome Colin.
Thank you, Mina, our Toastmaster, for that warm introduction tonight. Fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. It was Doug Anderson Trivia Night tonight. I am honored to evaluate Club 59 Elder Statesperson Doug Anderson. I learned a couple of very fascinating things about Doug this evening. Number one, he failed his first attempt to do an icebreaker speech. Number two, he hung around perhaps the most famous cannabis enthusiast in the history of the world in his adolescence. Are these two things connected? Just food for thought. Food for thought. Honestly, but Doug's reverence and his passion for Toastmasters and specifically for Club 59 is remarkable. So he is just a tremendous leader and somebody that we can all learn from every week he is here. And with that in mind, as Doug is a very senior speaker, very advanced, I just watched him. I watched him and I thought, what did Doug do tonight that we all can replicate and learn from in our own speeches? I'm going to highlight a few of those things. Number one, body language, control, and posture. Doug has impeccable physical posture up here. Did you notice that? Doesn't slouch. He is very present, and he has tremendous body control. He has amazing use of hand gestures. He doesn't overuse his hands. He uses them just enough. And I've watched Doug do endless numbers of speeches, and I never noticed just how masterful he is with regard to his body control. When you're up here, you speak with your body, be mindful of that, control yourself, minimize the distractions. He had great eye contact. He had amazing voice inflections. It wasn't monotone at all, okay? The other thing that really stood out for me, the interplay between humor, story, and meaningful life lessons. Doug told us a story, there were some emotional aspects to the stories. He offset that with some humor, right into a life lesson. He did it over and over and over again, and it was wonderfully balanced. Doug had a really good message, find a mentor. If somebody gives you a presentation, you should always walk away with a clear, concise idea of what was the purpose of that speech. For me, find a mentor. So Doug had a very simple, approachable message that I think we can all relate to. Find a mentor, find mentors, you're going to be successful. So I really liked the simplicity and the approachability of his message. In terms of an opportunity for improvement, Doug could have had a little bit more structure. He could have started out with a stronger purpose statement at the beginning, so we knew where he was taking us. It was an icebreaker. Icebreakers aren't meant to be necessarily as organized as some other speeches, but something for him to consider. Just inject a little bit more structure and purpose before you start your speech. That way you'll know exactly where you're taking us. Back to you, Mina.
Our second evaluator is Natalie Posnansky. She'll be evaluating Fawcett, and something I discovered about Natalie lately is she always discovers something that no one noticed when she gives her evaluations. Please help me welcome Natalie.
Hey, good evening, Toastmasters, and welcome guests. It's my pleasure tonight to evaluate Farzad's icebreaker speech. So this is the first formal speech that Farzad has ever given at the club, and I have to say I think he did a wonderful job. So the way I'm going to do this evaluation is I'm going to use the style that Deborah coined, which is 2 stars and a wish. So 2 things that I think that Farzad did very well, and then 1 thing that I think that he could use in his future speeches that could elevate his speaking in general. So the first thing that I noticed when Farzad came on the stage was his presence. He came on with a very strong and dynamic voice. He had a really animated facial expression, and I found that that really captured the audience's attention. He had really good energy. One thing that he also did that because I've seen him now do a couple of table topics, and I noticed when he was in his first time ever speaking up here, he was actually standing back on the stage quite a bit. And in this speech, I wanted to recognize this because I've seen him be up here a couple times. He was using the stage and actually coming up towards the audience a lot more. So I wanted to recognize that that's already an improvement in his speaking style up here, and I found that it made a huge difference. So well done. So in his speech, he told us a bit about himself, and he told us a few humorous things about his bad or quirky, let's say, habits about, I think a lot of us could probably be guilty of this, of scanning through your phone, and he talked to us about how he was trying to trust this process of joining Toastmasters and what it could do for him, and trusting also the people he was going to be speaking in front of, because that's also something that I think we all confront is how do we trust this room to support us. And so I found that the theme that he chose for his speech was very good, and he had a humor in it as well. And one thing about his theme that I found was very strong especially for an icebreaker speech, is that he had a call of action at the end of the speech. He encouraged everyone to confront their monsters or their demons. I think he said, use the word monsters, about how to connect. So not to ignore a connection to something like Toastmasters when you feel like something's right. So I thought that was very, very powerful as well at the very end of an icebreaker speech. And one thing that I would suggest to Farzad that could be used to elevate his future speeches is when he chooses a theme for his speech. For example, this one was trust. It was in his title of his speech, and he also tied into it at the end, which was excellent. And I would suggest that even when going off into segues on the side of his main speech theme, trying to tie in as much as possible so that every line or every part of the speech really has a clear purpose and then it's tied in with the overall theme. So overall, excellent icebreaker, and we look forward to hearing more speeches by Farzad in the future.
There's a change of third evaluators as a last minute. So in my chat to come in to evaluate hands, please help me welcome chat.
Yeah, well, I'm getting a lot of ice time tonight. I've been up here like 4 times. So, Hans, this is your icebreaker speech, and honestly, man, I think you did an amazing job. You know, the entire speech was very well thought out and very well structured, right from the beginning to the end. So one of the things I wanted to say in particular that you did was very well is you gave us a great foundation to begin to understand who you are as a person. And so you started to talk about what it is that you love. Now there's 2 advantages to doing that, especially in an icebreaker speech. Now the first one is obviously you know the subject, and so you can rattle on about it for ages. But if you make a mistake as well, you can find your way back, right? And making mistakes up here when you're giving speeches is just a given. So try to talk about something you really, really know well, and you did that very, very well. Now, one of the things that you could have done a little bit better, just one point of elevation, is to try to describe the emotions that you're conveying with a little bit more emotion. So I like to think of when we're up here on stage that we don't have a single voice, we actually have 3 voices. So the first voice that we have obviously is our voice itself. The second voice that we have is our body, right? And our body language conveys the emotion that we're feeling, whatever it might be, sadness, excitement, whatever it could be. The last voice is your eyes. So when you're actually talking about something that's really exciting, you can see it in a person's eyes. And if you connect to your audience members directly in the eyes, they'll feel it too. So just work on trying to make that connection a little bit more. When you talked about staring at the pile of materials, you were looking over there. So those 3 items right there, you can be like, I was staring at the pile of materials, and I was just trying to figure out what potential could I see there? What lay in that pile of chaos right now? And that's where I want to get to next, is the toy boxes. You wrapped this speech up incredibly well. And you brought meaning to the entire speech in what you're trying to build up here. So in particular, you talked about Toy Boxing Day, which was a clever use of humor. I really liked that a lot. And then you talked about clearing out the stuff in the shop and how that kind of, well, there's a bit of sadness there because you had put so much effort into it and now it's gone. But you had brought a lot of meaning out of a pile of chaos, and you turned it into a purpose which brought joy into so many children's hearts. So really a fantastic speech, and I look forward to seeing more.
Takeaway evaluations. Our last evaluator is Joseph Fedopowicz. When I asked Joseph about his Christmas gift, he said nothing that will take the space. What a great answer. Please help me welcome Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests. And of course, good evening and thank you to Mark for his incredible speech tonight. As many of you might have noticed, that entire speech was one giant table topics. So if table topics weren't already nerve-wracking enough, imagine having to do one for 5 to 7 minutes. Just let that sink in. It's not an easy thing to do. So this was a great achievement by Mark, and I commend Mark for achieving that. So just to go over a few things that he did well, and then also I'll touch on areas where he could have improved based on the description of that speech, of the requirements of that speech. So we started with an anecdote, which is a great idea. In fact, that anecdote thread throughout his entire speech, which was really helpful in the beginning to sort of collect his thoughts. Because just once again, think about how intense it is to do a table topics, then imagine that you have to structure your thoughts for the next 5 to 7 minutes. That's not easy. So that was a great strategy, and that's something that we can all learn for table topics. And just in general, the purpose of the speech is to be able to, when called upon, make an impromptu speech. Right in our day-to-day lives in our workplace, that's an incredibly helpful skill. There was a clear message, which was one of the requirements, and I think that was very helpful. The clear message was, don't worry about political correctness, it's all about respect. And to underscore that, he gave us his personal story and talked about his parents and how those were the values that were imparted upon him. He was also authoritative, right? That is not the right approach. That was a quote directly pulled from his speech. So by saying that is not the right approach, having a downward inflection at the end and using the hands and the body language, he was authoritative, and that's part of what this speech is all about. Being able to make a point convincingly when called upon, even though you hadn't thought ahead of time about what you were going to say. Now, one area where he could have improved, once again based on what was required of this speech, is structure. It was a bit of a meandering speech where it would go in various different directions based on the anecdote. But even though that was a requirement, personally, I thought the anecdote was really helpful. I thought it helped underscore what it was he was trying to say. So although it didn't have the exact kind of structure that you might want in a speech, I thought at the same time that the anecdote was and the anecdotal nature of it sort of brought it home, because it was really about him, about his experience, and once again, I think that made it more authoritative, more personal, and therefore more credible, which is ultimately the purpose of the speech. So with that, I just want to thank Mark again for giving us an incredible speech, 5 to 7 minute table topic. Once again, let that sink in. That was pretty incredible.
Thank you, Joseph. And thank you for all the speakers and evaluators tonight. Will you be surprised to know that actually there's 17 and 18 of us on the agenda to bring this meeting together? What does that mean? That means for a club with only 50 people, we pretty much need all of you to come and show up every time. Let me leave you with a quote, I bought from Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. And I modify a little bit. It goes, the cowards never started, and the weak die along the way. That leaves us, fellow Toastmasters, and our dear guests, us. Thank you. And back to our chair.
Thank you, Mina. And now we're coming to the point where we need to ask our support roles, who will talk to us about the timing. Please, Carrie and Jeff, and the counter, please. So each one of the support roles will have exactly 1 minute for their part.
Okay.
I'll measure the time.
We have 3 icebreakers. They are all over the time. But luckily, right now, looks we still on time. Okay. I think Doug Anderson spent 9 minutes 3 seconds, and second icebreaker I think spent 8 minutes 17 seconds, and the last icebreaker is 6 minutes 48. And I think Mark is quite good, 6 minutes 20 seconds. I think Otherwise, I will take my own time. Cheer.
I would like to emphasize that in my eyes, that is one of the hardest roles during the meeting. That's why I often avoid it. Because you have to focus and you have to make sure that you have to cut people you respect and like if they go over time. So thank you for being so firm in doing the right job. We're almost on time. Please, Carrie.
Well, we learned a lot today about how to express ourselves, including how to express ourselves using different forms of languages. We heard from Chad a moment ago about using your 3 voices, words, body, and eyes. That was really a nice takeaway for me today. Hopefully you got something out of that as well. How we punctuate our speeches is something we really have to be careful about. It's noticing subtleties. So I'm going to ask a question of everyone here today. How many Christmas boxes did Hans make?
14.
14. And he spent about 35 hours, so that's about 2.5 hours a box. So see, someone in the room here today noticed that. And that's what noticing those filler words, the ums, the ahs, the so's, rather than punctuating your presentation in a slightly different way. Well, I'm a hockey fan. How many hockey fans are in this room? A few, not too many. Well, there's a term called goals against. That means how many goals have been scored against your team. Well, our goals against average today 2.6 filler words or expressions all night.
That's good.
So I'm encouraging you as we go further, and you stand up here, see if you can find a way to just eliminate 1 or 2 of those filler words and phrases, and all of a sudden your presentations in public are going to improve that much more. Now, even more remarkably, there were 30 people up here today. 30 people, and 10 of those people didn't use 1 filler word. Isn't that remarkable?
I'm very grateful for our speakers, and I have to tell you that I am more and more surprised by Nina. I wouldn't be even thinking that I will focus on political correctness or incorrectness here, and I was very impressed by the speech by Mark, because it's not an easy topic, and I'm going to be absolutely politically incorrect. Now you know that I'm not, so I can beat. We are supposed to say everybody is equal, we like everybody equally. No. I like Doug the most, I respect Doug the most. That's true. But I also have another guy, in addition to my husband, don't tell him, that I really like in this club, because he's goofy, he's smart, he's free, and every time he speaks, I just have a good time. I couldn't have asked for more, but are you even listening? He's married. Focus on me, look at me.
I am so focused on that.
I am so happy and grateful that Tom agreed to be the general evaluator today, because I know it's going to be fun, we will learn, and we'll remember this moment. Tom, great.
Madam Chair, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. 'Twas 3 weeks before Christmas when through Club 59, the meeting was fabulous. And it started on time. The speakers were excited, and they were handled with care. And also Marina, who was a fabulous chair. The members were nestled all snug in their seats with visions of Kit's Yacht Club, where we always meet. With Marina in her sweater and I in my suit. And James' inspiration, which was awesome to boot. I sprang from my chair when I heard all the clatter. I came to the stage to see what was the matter. Away from the window I flew like a flash when I found Jeff the timer for our 2-hour bash. Well done. When what to my wondering eyes should appear, but Carrie, our counter, the man has no fear. With Jillian, our educator, so lively and quick. I knew her presentation would be superbly slick. More rapid than eagles, the speakers they came, and we whistled, and we shouted, and we called them by name. On Eric, our table topics master tonight. He didn't seem nervous. His presentation was tight. His voice was commanding. His story, so dear. His table topics content had everyone's ear. On Jen, on Connor. Where are you? Where's Connor? He gone? Oh, he does make us laugh. On Miguel, whose Spanish accent is completely first class. On top of the stage, on top of the wall, oh, Chad made us laugh away all. So onto table topics we flew, and Liam's evaluations was remarkable too. With a twinkle, he gave such great advice. He was helpful, informative, and really quite nice. And as I drew my hand to turn around and see, it was lovely Mina Fung, our Toastmaster this eve. She was dressed very nicely with a holiday flair, with a sweater and jeans, and that fabulous hair. And you always make us laugh. That was a great job tonight. Doug Anderson, oh how he twinkled, his dimples so merry. His cheeks are like roses, his nose like a cherry. His presence incredible, he speaks like a pro. With the hair on his head just as white as the snow. He has a broad face and a round little belly that shakes when he laughs like a bowl full of jelly. Even though I'm not even supposed to evaluate you, I had to throw you in here. The evaluations were excellent to this jolly old elf, and I laughed when I heard them in spite of myself. With a wink of my eye and a twist of my head, I knew at this meeting I had nothing to dread. We spoke many words, but you did excellent work. I hope the guests enjoyed themselves while they quietly lurked. To all the evaluators off the top of my nose, I'll give you a nod, but stay on top of your toes. Keep the spring in your step, use all of the stage. Explore the positions and don't be afraid. Colin, Natalie, Chad, Joseph, I believe? Joseph, great job. I thank all our guests. I wish you all luck. Don't worry, when I started, I really sucked. But make no mistake, like a building or a tower, all speakers should remember this position of power. And now I exclaim, as I get out of your sight, to all, Merry Christmas and a lovely good night.
objectively and politically incorrectly are the best. That's what we think. But Tom, thank you so much. It is.
And Julian's going, remember to say this and that. And I'm like, it doesn't rhyme, man.
He's done this before, about
really?
like 5 years ago.
More like 10 years ago. But
No,
just, you know.
Like,
Okay, but it is fun and creative, and I think it is the place where we can be creative. Even if we're creative and we fail, it's okay, because we are surrounded by friends, and that's, you didn't. But I'm trying to say that take the risk. And I think each one of us took risks during contests, during other events. That is the place to do that, because you are in a place where people will support you, and then you can do it elsewhere without being afraid. Thank you once again so much. And now we're going to be on time. Ask Jessica. It's not Jessica. Just Jessica. Jessica to do from Australia, from Sydney. That's I remember. I want to go there. She's going to introduce our ask feedback from our guests, please.
Melissa, Max, Allison, Jeff? Graham.
It's my
Thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you for coming along. You're in for a real treat with that last speech. That was incredible. I just wanted to invite you, before we finish off, to stand up and just give us one word how you thought tonight went, or what you experienced from tonight, just in one word. So Melissa, please.
I thought it was really educational.
Thank you. Graham?
If I'm going to be so bold, I'm going to say 2. The first one was pragmatic. A lot of everyone's here getting ahead of themselves and fixing what they need to see. And the second would be fun. A lot of people had a lot of fun today. So
I was impressed by all the icebreakers, so I'm happy then you start on the new program pathway. And for the evaluation, I was very impressed, especially with you. It was my first time. I've been many times, but it's the first time I've done this
This is wonderful, but I don't think you're understanding one word. Just joking. Allison?
Yeah, no, it was great. I'd say one word would be enlightening. You know, it made me pay attention to a lot of things that I probably do in my own speaking. So, no, it's good.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I wanted to finish with a very brief story from my own life. When we came here from Israel to North America, I was debating, should we celebrate Hanukkah, what about Christmas, how to make my kids not confused, and I really buy Christmas tree, but it's against, he can see that. So I kept thinking what to do. So I decided to celebrate Hanukkah, and just when I finished the celebration, I began celebrating Christmas, so my kids experienced both. But my kids got absolutely confused. In Hanukkah, we have Judah Maccabee, who is the hero during the Hanukkah. On the other hand, during Christmas, you have Santa Claus and other things, and other heroes for Christmas. So my kids celebrated Santa Maccabee. They didn't know what to celebrate. And then one of my sons told me, "Mom, we don't care what we celebrate as long as you bring us presents."